we have the opportunity and we have the ability to dictate the outcomes of our future. And right now, there's a lot of doomer mindset. There's a lot of, oh, the world is fucked. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to keep, drinking on the weekends and Netflixing and doing whatever. And a lot of people who go down the crypto, blockchain, Bitcoin, health rabbit holes, they actually come out with a more negative mindset than when they entered, because you learn about all these environmental toxins, you learn about how corrupt our monetary, our political systems are, and then you feel helpless, you feel like there's no bother. However, that couldn't be further from the truth. And we are a prime example of that. So many people who have taken control of their lives are an example of that, that we can build solutions, we can build alternative societies and systems that do improve the quality of our lives. Yes, we don't know what's going on in the global macro geopolitical world, but focus on what's in your sphere of influence, and you will be bewildered at how your mindset can actually dictate the outcome of your future. And really having a long-term vision, 5 to 10 years, for me has been the most helpful thing. What do you want your life to look like in 5 to 10 years? If you envision that and, make most decisions working towards that long-term future that you want to build for yourselves, you will get there. You just have to believe that. And any hurdles, any obstacles can be overcome. There will always be setbacks. But from a company perspective, from an individual perspective, if there is something that we want to solve, we can go and solve it. We just need to be deliberate about that and just go and do it, because talk is cheap, actions are underrated, and mindset is the most important thing in your life.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Otto Gomes Crypto Show. My name is Otto Gomes, your host, and today I have a very special guest, Tristan Scott. Tristan is an electrical engineer and host of Decentralized Radio and has applied deep first principles thinking to the considerable and largely underappreciated problem of the biological effects of non-native electromagnetic fields on human health. He went on to invent the Daylight DC-1 that uses a new type of display that's like e-ink, but faster. It looks and feels like paper, but runs at 60 frames per second, so you can work fluidly and use all your apps without compromise. The vision for Daylight is to build a whole ecosystem of healthier, more humane computers that respect our health, attention, and freedom. Thank you, Tristan, so much for joining me today. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Otto. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to talk to people who love decentralization and kind of like the holistic way of living in a sovereign manner.
Yeah, it's such an important topic, especially nowadays with everything that's been happening since 2020. And I'm sure you can attest to that in your own experience. So I want to start off this episode with getting to know you better and your journey to this point. And the question I always like to ask is, what was specifically your, quote unquote, red pill moment that kind of shook you out of the matrix and started you down this path?
Yeah, the reason why I really went down this rabbit hole is I had one too many concussions in 2018, or actually very end of 2017. And really, I was a college athlete. I was an engineering student, lost control of my health completely, ended up having post-concussive syndrome, headaches, inability to exercise, extreme fatigue for over 14 months straight. And around the 3-4 month mark, I went to a neurologist who's supposed to, help me, tell me what's wrong, give me advice on how to get better. And, he diagnosed me with what I had was post-concussive syndrome. And I said, what can I do to get better? And he's like, oh, just take it easy, try and get back into your routine. And I was like, oh, it's already been 4 months. So this doesn't really make sense to me how that is, the strategic advice that you're giving. So kind of went down a dark path for another month or two. And then I was spending a lot of time outdoors at my internship in Oregon, and really just because I'm really stubborn, decided that this was not going to be my new normal. So went down a self-healing rabbit hole, consumed a lot of, information on my own, YouTube videos, books, podcasts around health optimization. And simultaneously during that period, late 2017, early 2018, I had just gotten into crypto and Bitcoin, just very early understanding. So as my health journey kind of improved and, from an individual level where I just learned a bunch of things, implemented them, experimented, iterated, and really, have done that for the past 6-7 years now. And I feel better than I did before my last brain injury. I was learning about decentralized money and the issues with kind of our whole entire financial monetary system. And then this all like primed me very hard for the importance of individual sovereignty. And then COVID happened, and it was pretty much like, oh, okay, like this is like a total, prime example of what's wrong with the world and how at the individual level, I want to be in the driver's seat of my life. I want to be in control of my health and my wealth, which to me are the two most important things. So again, graduated from university, college, and was like, okay, if there's two areas I should probably know a lot about, it's health and wealth. And, that transpired into kind of what I've talked about online for the past 4 or 5 years.
Wow, what a journey, man. So tell me about 2020 for you. How was that experience? Was it like, were you sucked in a little bit into the narrative, or was it immediately like, I see you?
Yeah, I mean, I was following all these like, biohackers and health guys. And the first like data that came out was like, this is not really life threatening at all. So I kind of took that stance hard in the beginning and educated people that, yeah, this is probably going to spread to the US and things are going to happen. But I was actually educated online. I was like, here are natural ways you can boost your immune system, like getting outside, getting good sleep, taking like oil of oregano or something like that. So I immediately was like, this is not that big of a deal. However, here's some ways and here are some reasons why taking control of your health is so important, because say this was, 10 to 100 times more deadly, you probably want to, have your health in a good status, or you're going to be very susceptible. But yeah, it was obvious to me. And, I was really upset that I couldn't like work out and do normal things for that first couple months. But then I was moved to Utah and kind of went back and forth with Utah and Wyoming most of COVID. And it was pretty chill during, in those places. And it really just furthered the whole stance that I had in terms of the importance of decentralized health and decentralized money.
Yeah, I love talking to individuals that are really creating something new and something different that we're experiencing with mainstream media. And I've noticed a pattern that most people that are going down that road had some sort of health situation happen to them or someone very close to them to get them to that point. But you went down a very specific path with daylight. It's all about light frequency and, EMFs and all those things that we're now learning are extremely destructive to us on a cellular level. But tell me what steered you towards that direction specifically?
Yeah, yes. And just to clarify, this is not like my child. I'm part of the team now, and it aligns extremely well with everything I talk about. But my founder has been working on this for 6 years himself. And we converged. And again, I was an electrical engineer who went right into like the business side of the electronics and semiconductor industry. So I learned a lot about market dynamics, supply chain, and then also, of course, just applying product marketing skills to that. And then simultaneously was going deep down all this health optimization stuff. And after I wrote my book, Bitcoin and Beef, in 2021 and promoted it hard in 2022, I kind of got back to, it was all about the food system and diet and regenerative ag, which is extremely important. But then I was like, I see a big gap here, and I see a momentum kind of brewing in the electromagnetic aspects of our biology. And this is something that's really challenging to convey, to educate about, because it's a complex topic. And you have to have like a very base level knowledge of physics to even understand anything about light and EMFs. So, because of my background and passion for also getting outside and being immersed in nature, which ties directly into understanding the electromagnetic aspects of our biology, I decided to dive deep into the research, which again was a bit easier for me to understand right off the bat, and educate about that online the past couple of years. And that led me to daylight, and it was like a perfect match because for me, I have my lifestyle dialed in. I live here in Wyoming. I get lots of sun, cutting the power, cutting the Wi-Fi at night, grounded all the time, eating real food. My clothes are non-toxic, all of this. But the number one toxin in my environment that I was still very susceptible to was the technology, right? My phone, my laptop, like they're actually preventing me from being outside more, even though I can go to the park and work. It's just a challenge. And I saw that as still the number one environmental toxin, and there is no alternative, right? It's Apple, it's Google, it's Samsung, and they're all designed the same. They're all designed to be addictive. They keep you inside. They're high, in the wrong, spectrum of light. They're high in EMFs. They have high flicker. So all these issues. And if I stared at my phone for a long period of time, and again, trying to build your own social media, brand and platform, you have to be on your phone quite a bit. It's the kind of blessing and a curse of social media, especially if you're trying to educate people. And some of my, concussive like symptoms would come back after a really, really, intense day on my phone. And I kind of like tweak that, but, there's periods of times. And then, I knew from an engineering perspective that it was feasible to make healthier technology. I just never thought that anyone would survive the kind of startup phase because the barrier to entry is so high. I worked in semiconductors, electronics, the minimum order quantities, the supply chain, like nightmares. You basically have to already be a big company to have any sway with suppliers. So I was like, this would be amazing. Maybe in 10, 20 years, there'll be a company or the general trend, it'll just get so bad for our health that companies will be forced to change. And then, came to daylight, and this is already in the works for 4 or 5 years. And it is just incredible fit. And, having that skill set, that knowledge of light and EMFs, having this connection of people who are interested. It was like a match made in heaven. So now that's my job, and it's really fun. And we get to really pave the path forward for what healthier and more sovereign technology looks like. And it's exciting because people are ready for it now more than ever. Maybe 2-3 years ago, it was too early. Maybe in a few years, it would be a little late. But right now, the timing is perfect. Everyone from sovereign individuals like yourself to, parents tired of having their kids on screens way too much, like iPad kids, to in general, just more people wanting to take control of their health and get outside more. The attention kind of seeking economy is, I think, really peaking right now. And hopefully we can bring that back to a sustainable baseline with our mission.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it even makes me wonder, especially because obviously this technology now exists. Here it is. It makes me wonder if the intention for creating the high flicker rate and the blue light was to keep the individual captivated and the dopamine flowing so that they can stay on their device. It was really, really interesting that you shared about your concussion symptoms coming back when you're too much on the screen, especially because you're in crypto. And that's this is a big reason why I wanted to get you on, because I'm in crypto. I've been in since 2012. And for a long time, I would feel, I don't even know how to explain, like a tension in the body, like the frequency, I don't know the vibration, the vibe in the body would get tense from too much use. And then I'd have to like go outside and touch grass, just to be able to like de-stress a little bit and look at the sky and look at the trees. So tell me a little bit about the technology. Like, what is it? What is the intention behind it when it comes to the lower flicker rate, the 60 frames per second, and being this orange glow? Is it to really deter people from being too much on their device and still be able to use it, or is it, you know, yeah, what's the exact intention of creating the device, you think?
Yeah, for sure. And just to comment on your point of like, is this designed to be addictive from day one? I would say
Mhm.
probably not. I mean, you can go watch a YouTube video of like the history of like the blue LED. It was like the last color that they made because it's a higher energy wavelength. So from an engineering perspective, is far more challenging. And once they got the blue, they already had the red and the green. They could create white light. And replace like the entire lighting industry. And it was like this monumental
Oh,
effort for
wow.
over a decade to get a blue LED. So absolutely not like from day one thought to be like, oh, this is going to be on in front of everyone's face, like and just highly stimulating. If you ask someone in the late 90s or even the early 2000s, maybe even 2005, if every single person would have a smartphone and a laptop and be spending 12 hours a day staring at a screen, they would not believe you. So it's only kind of recently, but we know with like Las Vegas, with the slot machines, like they figured that stuff out really quickly that like bright lights, no outdoor lighting is going to keep you there and it's going to be hitting those dopamine receptors really strongly. So it's just how it's kind of crumbled. And again, you get back to like the monetary system, right? Like fiat money is creating this business model of being fiat farmed by big tech because that's like their entire necessity to have this sustained growth year on year to be beholden to their shareholders to be beating inflation from a devaluing currency. So that's the only way they can kind of keep up with that. And yeah, so that's a little rant there. But in
Fiduciary
terms of what
responsibility, right?
yeah, exactly. So in terms of what we're doing, why our technology is different, why it's healthier, why it's more sovereign, we basically at first principles looked at like, why is tech bad for us, and from a direct perspective, as mentioned, the light spectrum on the screen is highly unnatural. It's very high in the blue light, has like a very high peak. It's not full spectrum. So when you go outside and measure the light coming from the sun, you get the whole rainbow. You get red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and then you get UV, ultraviolet, and then you also get infrared as a lower energy wavelength before red. And what's become very popular the past 5 years, red light therapy, because these infrared red wavelengths are actually far more healing. And you never get blue, you never get green, you never get ultraviolet without the red and infrared. That's why any study on like UV being bad for us, they typically do it in isolation, where it's a total experimental, like it's just a wrong experimental process because it would never occur like that in nature. And especially in
Mhm.
nature, you're getting these signals early in the morning, like red and infrared, before you get the UV like at 10 a.m. or really strong UV at noon. So thinking about a screen that is high in blue and it has almost no or absolutely no infrared, almost no red. It's just an unnatural, unbalanced spectrum. And then at nighttime, you think of what happens when the sun goes down. There is no light actually. And for all of human history, we probably would have just had fire and candles, which are very, very rich in red and infrared and have basically, or they have no blue light at all, maybe like a tiny bit of green and mostly orange, red, and infrared. So any blue light at nighttime is going to be highly stimulating because it's really what wakes your body up in the morning. It's how your body is telling the time of the day. It stimulates cortisol production. And if you have that at night, it's going to disrupt your melatonin. It's going to disrupt your sleep. And that is a big problem. So, people are aware of that. However, there's these band-aid solutions like blue light blockers or night mode on an iPhone, which doesn't even block all of the blue light. Does like a tiny shift, but you can go in the settings, you can get a screen filter and kind of adjust them, but it's kind of a band-aid problem. So that's the light spectrum aspect. Then there's the flicker as well. So flicker is actually underrated for me because I don't hear a ton of people talking about it, and it's really another stressor. So these LEDs from the screens are constantly changing in their amplitude. So you can think of it, they're turning almost like on and off constantly. And iPhone screens do that 400 times a second. So you can look up like slow motion, or you can take a slow motion video of a screen and you'll see this distorted flicker or kind of change in the screen brightness. And you can't even visually perceive that, but your brain can, and it's compensating. And again, it's another stressor. So like what you said is your body's getting all tense, you feel like stressed out, and then you go outside and you kind of reset. And there's a reason for that, because these screens, they're highly unnatural in terms of how they're providing an input signal to our biology. So that's another one. And then you have the non-native electromagnetic fields, which is what, I've really talked a ton about online for the past couple of years. And we are definitely, playing a giant science experiment with, radio frequencies and even the low frequency, like electrical power EMFs. But for devices, it's typically in this radio frequency range. And there's lots of studies showing harmful biological effects of radio frequencies. So from cell phones, from Wi-Fi, this kind of range in the hundreds of megahertz to, gigahertz range. And the problem is the FCC has not updated their guidelines on radio frequency thresholds for safety since 1996, the year I was born. So this is before there was any smartphones. This is before Wi-Fi actually even existed. And, that just goes to show you the negligence of our, government bodies that are supposed to protect our society from potentially harmful effects, even though the International Agency for Research on Cancer has considered radio frequencies a potential carcinogen for at least a decade. But yeah, you can go look at the FCC guidelines. Robert F. Kennedy and the Children's Health Defense actually sued them successfully like 2-3 years ago. Absolutely nothing has changed since that, lawsuit, but it just shows you that they know it's complete negligence on their part. So we're using these things. They're providing these non-native input signals that are, again, another stressor for our biology. And there's a lot of evidence showcasing that. So those are the direct reasons, right? And then you tie in the addiction component that we were talking about, the play on the dopamine reward systems. The blue light induces that. And then also the social media, the internet content itself is inducing that, right? Like the likes, the short form viral videos, all of that. So then that's pulling us into this artificial reality more and more. And for me, the number one indirect kind of negative aspect of our technology is the fact that it's keeping us indoors. Whereas outside with sun, with grounding, like you said, touch grass, with fresh air, we are designed biologically to live in that world. That is the real world. And only in the past 100, 150, 200 years have we completely changed our environment, going mostly outdoors to mostly indoors. Actually, 90% of our time today is spent indoors, which is an inconceivable figure of how alarming that is to our biology. And just one example that showcases both the reason why you can't use your tech outside and also an important, difference between indoors and outdoors is brightness of the environment. So the light, indoors, why can you see your computer screen really well indoors and then you bring it outside and you can't see it at all, especially on a sunny day, is because it's the brightness of the environment. So indoors versus outdoors could be 100 to 1,000 times difference in brightness, maybe even 10,000 times difference, depending on how dull you're indoors and if it's a sunny overhead day. And you can't see your screen because the LEDs being emitted from your screen are competing with the sun. And you're always going to lose that battle because, you need extremely, extremely high power LEDs to even get on the same level as the brightness of the sun. And then that brightness is a measure of just light density or photon density, which is energy. So you're leaving by just being indoors far more often, 100, maybe 1,000 times the amount of energy on the table. It's a different kind of energy than food per se, but it's still energy that our biology can utilize. So those are kind of all the reasons why tech is bad. And we went okay, how do we address these? What's the most important thing? And for us, the screen technology is our big differentiator. So the light,
Mhm.
the flicker, the ability to use it outside, we check all these boxes. So we have a reflective screen technology at the core of it. So you can bring it outside, similar to like a Kindle, where it's reflecting the light and then back into your eyes. So one, you
Mhm.
never have a problem of not being able to see it outside because it's working with the sun, it's working with nature instead of against it and competing with it. And then you can actually see it better in that direct sunlight. And it's a more natural way we perceive light, similar to like, why are the leaves on a tree or a bush green? Because it's reflecting green light back to your eyes. So that reflective screen is naturally, if you turn the backlight completely off and it's fully reflective, it's naturally not emitting any light. So it's not
Mm.
even just blue light free, it's all light free. And then it's flicker free because sunlight is naturally continuous. There is no flicker to sunlight. And then at nighttime, or when you come indoors, we also have a backlight. We have custom made LEDs that also have no flicker because we made a custom LED driver to have direct current dimming. So there's no flicker on those LEDs either, which is kind of a very simple engineering thing. But in a modern world, due to supply chain normality, very challenging to implement that. So that took, a lot of deliberate effort to get that implemented. And then the backlight at nighttime, when you toggle it to the amber mode, or as you say, like the orange kind of looking screen, you also have no blue light. And that is a better visual experience than any software filter, any blue light blocking glasses, because those things are not addressing flicker. And then they're also impossible to see when you crank it all the way to red mode, which is the only way you can get zero blue light. So we worked with some light scientists to make sure we have the best spectrum that's far more broad. It's almost acting more similar to a candle, where it has like a tiny bit of green, a lot of orange, and then still zero blue light. So the screen technology is electronic paper by kind of the category, right? It feels like electronic paper, feels almost analog. You can bring it outside, you can see it really well, but then simultaneously has no blue light, no flicker. And really, those are kind of the core benefits. And we can
Mhm.
kind of get into more of the specifics, but I'll pause
I
there.
love I love your passion about it. You've definitely done your work to really know what you're talking about. I often say that if you don't use technology intentionally and with clarity, you become the product, right? It
Yep.
starts to use you. And I love that you guys are on the other side of the technology, creating it with intention, creating it with consciousness, and clarity of like health and how it affects the human element. We talked about fiduciary responsibility with these companies, and it's all about the shareholders and making sure that they're getting their money and they're getting their investment worth. What is something that you guys have created or have you to mitigate that? Because I feel like a lot of technology companies start with good intentions, providing something new, a new tool, new access, new ways to connect. And then eventually, because of the fiduciary responsibility, it becomes toxic over time. Is that something you guys have thought about already?
Oh yeah, that's probably one of the key core principles. It starts with our investors that we've accepted funding from. Very like strong
Mm.
vetting process. Almost no venture capitalist money. Mostly private, high net worth individuals that are very mission aligned, and that makes it an extreme challenge. And my CEO Anjan spends a ton of effort talking to potential investors because we have to go one by one and really vet people. And yeah, that doesn't compromise our mission long term, because we cannot be beholden to our cap table, beholden to a venture capitalist firm to potentially change or influence our direction and our main goal, which is to create healthier and more sovereign technology that is less invasive to our biology. And that long term turns into we don't have like this strong desire to either be beholden to shareholders. We don't know exactly what that looks like, but we'll probably do a daylight computer, kind of unique path where we can, reward people for being a part of our mission from an equity perspective, but it's not going to be in a traditional manner. And then we're also a public benefit corporation officially. So in actually our mission legally, it is to serve the people who are supporting our project, our mission, and that's kind of something that is typically used for, like, I guess you could call it greenwashing, or it's all just like a saying, but we want to make it something that's actually in truth, right? And that we have a public benefit corporation status, and we want to use that for exactly what it says we are going to do. So there's a few different things, but I think at the core, it's understanding that we need to find people that are mission aligned with us and want to see this succeed, and not let up any control or any compromise to the roadmap, to the game plan, because that might help us get to market with a new product sooner. That might help us sell more units. Like, we're low time preference because we know that it's going to take a longer time to do it. But in the end, that is the best way to achieve what we want to achieve. And if we change our business model to be more similar to the centralized big tech companies, then what are we really solving and providing an alternative for at the end of the day?
Yeah. Wow. That was great. Great answer. Again, all the individuals that I've aligned with and I've talked about that are creating new paths and creating new ways of interacting with each other are actually doing the same thing. They're going through a major vetting process, filtering out based on the individual's perspective. I mean, it's how else do you do it at this point in reality, right? You have to create that filter in some way or another. So that's great. I'm so happy to hear that from you guys, that you're actually have that in the back of your mind. So let's talk a little bit about the actual technology itself. If you can maybe go into a little bit more detail of what kind of technology is in. I know you've already spoken a lot about the screen and the flicker rate, which, by the way, that's very interesting. And you're right. I have not heard many people talk about the flicker rate. It's always about the blue light and how it affects circadian rhythm, but the flicker rate, goodness gracious, that's such on point. But yeah, is there Bluetooth in it? Is there Wi-Fi in it? What kind of things are in it that you've created to at least create a good experience, I guess? Can you download any apps? Like how does it look like?
Yeah. So what is our product? So the daylight computer, the DC1, which is, we launched end of May. It's a fully functional computer tablet that has a modified Android operating system. So we're working not only on hardware, not only on the screen, we are developing our own OS that is going to be centered around, low distraction, low stimulation, and sovereignty and privacy in the long term. Obviously, this is an iteration, right? Software is constantly a progression. So we're working towards launching what we're calling Soul OS in a few months. And it's just going to be a constant iteration as we deviate away and create our own ecosystem. Because when we have the ability to control the whole stack, the hardware, the software, the screen, at the OS level, that allows for a lot of innovation and customization around sovereignty and kind of cognitive, I guess, sovereignty as well. So sovereignty on the privacy level, and then sovereignty from the health intention level as well. So that's something we're really excited about. But yeah, you can download any Android app from the Google Play Store. You can go on the internet. You can chat on WhatsApp, on Telegram, on Signal.
Do Instagram on there?
Instagram, Twitter. So
that's cool.
Yeah, you can do anything like on a traditional tablet or computer that you can do. The difference is, there's no color. So think of a Kindle with the speed and functionality of an iPad is what we like to say. You can bring it outside, you can use it, but you're not getting that highly distracting, highly stimulating light of the screen, and then you're still able to be productive. So we're changing from like a portal that's sucking you in to just a tool that's very neutral to your environment, allows you to dive into those deep workflow states. And yeah, it has a USB-C connection, so you can either hardwire, any keyboard or any mouse, or you can connect two devices via Bluetooth. We're working on creating our own keyboard case to make that even easier. It connects, to Wi-Fi. If you're, an EMF nerd, you could get a USB-C to Ethernet and hardwire it. And we're working long-term on creating more like EMF-friendly accessories. And we have some features coming out, such as smart airplane mode, that'll kind of default to going into airplane mode. So if you're just writing or reading and not connected to the internet, you won't be pinging a radio frequency signal. And then on, all future products, I'm going to dive deeper on the hardware level for EMF mitigation. But yeah, you can pretty much use it like a full, like a iPad, but there's no stimulation from the color. There's no harmful kind of flicker, and we can use it outside. It's really a cutting edge experience and an eye-opening experience, especially for reading, for note taking. Again, it's like an electronic paper type screen. So that sort of experience for me is the most really just changed perspective. Like it feels like something that's analog, but it's digital. And for me, I read a lot of research studies, and I bought a printer to like print out a lot of papers. But now I can just download the PDFs. I can annotate notes right on the daily computer, and it's a way better experience. It's more efficient, and it's still getting that, cognitive learning that you get when you're physically writing something as opposed to just reading it. So yeah, you can do a ton with it. And it's something that I'm working into my daily routine more and more, and excited for everyone to also experience what it can feel like to work on a tool that is not actively trying to capture your attention and get you to spend as much time as possible on there. We're in the camp that less is more. And if you can do 6 hours of work, but be hyper productive, and then you can do it outside, then that should be, the most ideal way to get your work done and be productive.
I love that it defaults to healthy, right? It doesn't default to everything on, all the signals coming at the same time. That's a great way to perceive it and to create it. How much does it cost? I think right now it's still in pre-order. How much is it?
Yeah, so we launched May 23rd, and it costs $729, and that includes a white stylus pen and a sleeve for the carrying case. So we actually, at the time of this recording yesterday, sold out for all of our 2024 batches. So everything was kind of, I guess you'd say, somewhat of a pre-order because we're not shipping on demand. Again, hardware, extremely expensive. The fact that we even executed on any supply chain to this point and gone to market is incredible. But like, for example, our last batch 5 that just sold out, will be shipping in November. Now we're working hard to get, more funds from our investors to get more orders placed over the next 1 to 2 months. So hopefully we might be able to pull some in to late 2024, right before Christmas, if not early 2025. But yeah, you can place a $100 deposit to kind of hold your spot in line as well on our website. But that's where we're at right now with the product. And it's been awesome to, have this sort of success. But it also points to kind of the challenges, how hard it is to break into a market in hardware, because the supply chain kind of hurdles are very, very high, but we're chopping them down one by one, which is fun.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that how you were able to get a supply chain that what would you say is the amount that you have in each batch?
It was around 1,000 units. So again, it's
very low.
great.
It seems like very low quantity for a plate. What's the name of what's the word? I can't think of it. the supply chain. Yeah.
Yeah,
It seems like a very low number, but yes.
and
How
like
did you, how were you able to achieve that?
my CEO spent years trying to convince them, and basically just got like really lucky to entertain,
Yeah.
what we're trying to do, right? And it happened because Apple like backed out of one factory and one supplier completely because they changed their screen technology, and amongst like 10 other things that happened for this to transpire. But yeah, it's really extraordinary because typically you need to have hundreds of thousands of units for anyone to care about you. So we've gotten really lucky. It's kind of meant to be, I think. However, now we just need to execute. So we need to sell units. We need to, meet our supplier terms that we've put on the table, and then we can kind of keep improving. So in 2025, we can have shorter lead times because we've sold more units and we're now ordering for further in advance. We have the stable cash flow. And then long term, once we reach a certain threshold, that's all like in our best interest, and we can get terms because people like Apple and Amazon and Google, they are they're paying like 30 days after shipping, whereas we have to put a lot of money up front because we don't have any credibility as a recent startup. So it's a fun experience to navigate, and like I said, we're kind of just chopping it down one road mark at a time, and that's where the support from our community and who's purchased products is so we're so thankful for that, and we're really excited to keep spreading the message out there because that it's kind of a grassroots effort. Like it's a very organic movement to be able to make this successful.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think everything right now, we're sort of all in this transitional period. We're bridging. We're bridges to this new reality, and it's a transition. So, sometimes it takes a little time and effort and blood and sweat to make it happen. To make it happen. Any affiliate opportunities? And if not, will there ever be one?
Oh yeah, we have an affiliate program for sure. So we
I'm
have
in. I'm in.
yeah. So you can send us an email at hello@daylightcomputer.com for getting signed up for our affiliate program, and basically any other general questions you have. Hello at Daylight Computer. We have an amazing customer success team, and partnerships. Anyone who's interested in potentially investing or doing something from a media perspective, you can reach out. Eventually, that'll make its way to my desk. So yeah.
Oh, 100%, man. I'm completely on board with this. All my technology that I have currently, I've done everything possible to mitigate the blue light. I'm actually not wearing my glasses right now. I left it in Florida before I left there. But all my devices have like the orange glow. You can like
Mm-hmm.
change the settings to make that happen. But yeah, man, this is incredible technology. I
It's
love it.
cool. I do all of
So
that, right?
thoughts
But
on?
oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, like, it's that band-aid solution, right? Like, we're gonna do
Yeah.
that. We're like, crazy about it, but most people are not gonna do that, and then it's still like not solving the root cause of the problem. So that's what's
Which
fun
the
about this.
flicker, I mean, the flicker thing, I'm like, that right there, just that alone is a huge issue. And what you said was most of them are at 400 frames per second.
Yeah, the iPhone flicker rate that I've measured and seen is around like 400 to 480 hertz
And
or
yours is
frames
at
per second.
60, which is
Yeah.
extremely low in comparison. That's amazing. Um, is there any intention of incorporating either AI, artificial intelligence, or blockchain?
Yeah. So AI, I mean, definitely there's a ton of apps out there, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
everyone's incorporating AI. So a lot of, the apps that you can download, whether it's Notion, whether it's like Perplexity, they're baking artificial intelligence in. How we do that directly, again, it's going to kind of evolve in a way. We see AI is definitely an awesome thing that can help us be more efficient and productive. But is really, yeah, going to be in like this transitional stage as well for the coming years. So we'll see how that evolves. We're definitely very curious and use internally a lot of tools to help improve our productivity as well. So it kind of aligns very much so with like less is more. Like, how do we get the most out of the time we have? And then in terms of blockchain, you know, we have this opportunity, right, with like decentralized software. Let's just call it that, because I think blockchain is maybe kind of an overused term. That's a bit, yeah, it got a bit hyped up. But really, the sovereign software protocols. What is the big problem with all these sovereign software ideas, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Nostr? Like you just go down the list. Is they have a UI UX problem, right? Like they're never going to onboard millions and millions of people because there's too big of a barrier for like my mom to know how to send like a Bitcoin transaction or take it and put it into cold storage or, use MetaMask or something. Like it's just way too high of a barrier for entry. And even the most decentralized ones like Nostr are even more so challenging. Because that's what happens, right? Like you have this individual responsibility. You own your private keys, like you're responsible, but that can be very scary. So we have this opportunity to, incorporate sovereign software protocols into our operating system directly, right? Because we can kind of be that hardware, that interface that is far more familiar to people. And then under the hood, there's something like, maybe it's some sort of Bitcoin Lightning Pay or some sort of Nostr identity. So when you log in, instead of having Facebook or Google log in to every app, it's just done at the OS level, and that's all synced up with your personal identity through like your private or your public key. And that's something that's fun to explore, that because that taps into the sovereignty and privacy aspects, but it also solves potentially a huge issue that everyone in these spaces has right now, and that's user experience and just reach, because most people are just using it as an investment perspective, but in terms of an everyday use case, we're very far from that. So I would say that's kind of the opportunity we see. Certainly on the roadmap as we evolve our own software and our own operating system. But yeah, we're exploring some fun ideas right now.
I love that. Yeah, I agree. It's definitely the user experience. That's what he's mentioning there. The user experience, user interface. It's a huge barrier to entry. That I agree. I think that's why adoption is a big chasm right now. It's a big wall to be able to get people to know how to use it. Without tooting my own horn, I do have a handful of 80-year-olds that have created that path for themselves through my education and through my academy. So, it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work of learning the layers and learning the fundamentals of the technology to be able to be responsible for that. Why? Because there's no 1-800 number to call when things go wrong. You really got to know your stuff. So I'm glad that you guys at least have that in the back of your mind, to incorporate and to make it easier for those to get into the crypto space. What would you say is a piece of advice that you can give to parents that have kids and, the use of devices? What would be, even though your technology is incredible, it's very healthy in how it's built, what is your recommendation, even for your device with parents?
I think the first step is understanding how cognition is evolving in a developing child, right? So anyone who has a kid or, has a nephew or a niece or family member, that they're learning through curiosity, they're learning through immersion, they're really copying, what things are going on in their environment and what other people are doing. So basically they're taking all these inputs, and that's how their cognition is developing. So we have a big problem right now that we're handing children screens, iPads, computers, devices at a very young age. And they're very, very susceptible because they're in this developmental state. So they are going to be sucked in by the blue light, by the highly stimulating videos that they're watching far more. And their biology, because they have smaller bodies, they're holding the devices closer to their bodies, they have higher water content, they're going to be 10, 100 times probably more susceptible to the negative effects. And then they're then developing this mental model, their brain, their cognition, based on the environment that they are in. So if they're spending 2-3 hours on an iPad, that is where they are developing, their cognition. So they're going to be modeling, oh, this is my reality, so let's program our functions for that world. As opposed to, going outside, experiencing real things, physically touching, understanding the dynamics there. So that's kind of like the level set. So in general, putting off screens and devices to as late of a date in terms of their age as possible is the number one recommendation. And I think in my last presentation I gave, there was a study that showed the average age of smartphone introduction was directly correlated with mental health of the individual. So the longer you waited as a parent to give your child their first smartphone, the better their mental health score was after the fact. And it's no surprise, right? Because we know how that reality kind of changes your whole perception of how people think about you, or you think about other people, ego, and kind of just the entire social dynamics, right? So that's one, delaying as much as you can. Two, getting them outside in that real world and getting all those beneficial input signals as much as possible. Children are meant to play, they're meant to run around, they're meant to be outside and, fall over or get in the dirt, kind of learn both from like a proprioception perspective, but then also just from everything else in their environment. And that's like number two. And this goes for that. Number two applies for everyone, age, 1 month to 100 years old. Like, get outside as much as possible. Like that's
grass,
me,
guys. That's grass.
The number one recommendation if you want to improve your health, your vitality, anything. And then three, think about how you can have a better relationship with those devices if you're already in that state. And we think our daylight computer is a far better alternative than anything out there, because it can be used outside. It's not highly stimulating with the light and the flicker, and kids will still love it. They won't care. Maybe on a couple days, if they transition from an iPad to a daylight computer, they'll be like, oh, this is weird. But if you give them the option, it's like, it's this or nothing, they're going to choose the daylight computer every single time. And if you take it away from them from anecdotal evidence, the temper tantrums aren't as severe as if you take an iPad away from a 3-4 year old. They just lose their marbles completely. And we're just starting to get some anecdotal feedback on this. So it's very early, no guarantees, no studies have been done yet. But think about, how you can create, a healthy relationship. Maybe it's, okay, kids, you get like 1 hour of screen time a day, choose it how you want. But if you spend it all in one go, then you don't get any screens for the rest of the day. Or, you can break it up into like 3 sessions. Like, I have a couple of friends that have, children, and they've tried this, and, understanding the dynamic and trying to make that clear is definitely helpful. And then just getting them excited about other things, having a challenge or an education around something else, building something in your backyard, or teaching them, how to interact with other aspects of the world that are less stimulating and more beneficial for their development. So I'm not a parent yet. I can't give you direct advice, but from things I've observed, I think that's kind of like the basis to a strong foundation. And it's a challenge because I know there's single parents out there. There's parents that are both working really hard, and kids are crazy, right? Like they'll throw a tantrum, they'll lose their mind. And sometimes giving them a device is an easy way to kind of de-escalate a situation, especially if you're out in public. But just thinking ahead of time on how you could potentially improve that, and then slowly just try for little progressions, is kind of a good way to go about doing anything that you're trying to improve.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I just read recently, and I have a few friends that have kids and have done the research on the developmental stages from 0 to 8 years old, when the child is still in theta brain state. They're essentially absorbing information rather than cognitively learning. One thing that I learned is that technology, if given before 9 to 8 years old, before that, it hinders or it stops their wiring for discernment, where IQ is measured based on one's ability to recognize patterns, to connect dots. And if you give that technology too young, it literally stops them from creating the wiring that allows them to discern, to use their own instinct and gut instinct. So important to be aware of that. But it's nice to know that, there's this new technology that is going to, at the very least, minimize the impact on the child's nervous system, their growth on a cellular level, their wiring, their brain wiring, because of just what is being absorbed, right? What is coming out of the technology itself. So that's great. I'm so excited for this. Literally, like this is bringing me hope to innovation. Because there was a time where I was like, where are we going with technology? Oh my goodness, things are getting worse and worse. And being a finance guy, I was always looking at the money and where the money's flowing and the fiduciary responsibility. Like, I can't say that enough, just because I feel like everything in this reality now has been driven by that, down to the core. That's the only intention. That's the only intention left. And it pushes aside the human element and the health impact on the human element. So a few more questions here and we can wrap it up. What would you say? So with everything you've been experiencing, everything you've been seeing on mainstream media, with technology, all of this, where do you see humanity going forward when it comes to technology in the next 6 to 12 months? Like, where do you see us moving forward into?
6 to 12 months. That's a pretty, I feel like that's a pretty,
maybe not 6. It can be a little farther out. But just like, what's your vision for, our path forward?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I do feel, obviously I live in a complete echo chamber and bubble sometimes, but I do feel like you just said,
that's why I asked that question. I'm so glad you said that. That's literally why I asked that question, because I feel like I'm in a bubble. I need to start asking these kind of questions to see what people are thinking. But yes.
Yeah, and I do feel a sense of the tides turning, and obviously we're on the front line, so we see that and we're playing a big part of that. But you even see with like what came out in the past 12 months, like the AI pins, and they were like a massive flop. And just in general, the Apple new iPad commercial that came out like a month and a half ago, the Crush ad, where it's like crushing all of these physically creative things, like musical instruments and toys and artwork, and then all of a sudden pops out like the screen of an iPad. It's super thin, it's super slick. We didn't have the time, but we wanted to create like an opposite of that, like a reaction to that, be like, stuff all of these physically creative things. And that's like what a daylight computer is, because you can use it outside. It's part of the real world. It's not destroying reality and sucking you in to the metaverse per se. So, and that was a huge flop as well, right? Like the Vision Pro, huge flop. Like the metaverse is all been a flop, right? They can market it as hard as they want, but it's not really working. And people know that their relationship with screens is bad. It's everyone knows that, but they can't really do a ton about it in the short term. However, I think if we build these alternatives, it makes it a lot easier for people to switch over. And I think we are slowly getting there. Do I ever believe that, daylight computer will capture like, 30% of Apple's market share? No, it's not going to happen. I think most people are unfortunately still going to be sucked into this, because they're just like so deep in that, and the fiat money plays a big role in that. They kind of just get stuck in this attention seeking fiat job economy, and they're just backs up against the wall. However, we start where we can start. So we start with the people who really value these things, really value health, really value sovereignty, and then we go from there. And I don't know how the next 10, 20 years plays out from a global economics or geopolitical perspective, I think that also has a big tie into this. But at the end of the day, if we can provide better alternatives and only 5% of the society like gets on board, that's millions of lives changed for the better. And we continue to build out our parallel systems, our parallel society, and people who live in that world will eventually become the majority. It might take 3 generations, but that's something that I'm excited to see play out. However, every day I go on the internet, I see more things being spiked out, like dumb phones, digital minimalism, kind of revolting against the big tech, highly stimulating economy. But then at the same time, we've had TikTok kind of take over the past 4 years. So it's a battle right now, and these forces are playing with each other, and they're tugging hard on each direction. And I think that's good, because this increased amplitude of oscillation is bringing us to a place where people are eventually gonna leave that highly stimulating economy of big tech and come over to our side, where we're touching grass and working outside, and less is more. But we'll see. I'm excited to see how it plays out.
We just got to keep bridging, man. We just got to keep creating those bridges and showing the path, and presenting it. There's a saying, vote with your dollar, but I say, I go a little deeper. Vote with your awareness, vote with your curiosity, and just start to question what it is that we're interacting with. And I feel like that will guide the dollar to the right location. Because the more we learn about all the health impacts of technology, and the more that people are now, I feel like there's been a huge focus on health because of 2020, and more people are becoming aware of what is impacting our health. And I think that was like the straw that broke the camel's back, with everything that we were interacting with or consuming or putting on our bodies or absorbing through light. So I'm so happy that there's a company out there that's actually making that happen when it comes to computers. So one last question, Tristan. And by the way, I just want to say thank you so much. If you do want to connect with Tristan and pre-order your computer, it's at www.daylightcomputer.com. You can find him on Instagram. It's he has his 2 accounts, or his personal account at Tristan_health. And then the company is at Daylight Co. And then you also have, I saw that you have on your account there, a 5-day email course, which I think is really cool around EMF. So definitely sign up for that, emfbattleplan.com. Good stuff, man. So one last question here, and then we can wrap it up. So you're standing in front of millions of people. You have a few minutes, maybe 90 seconds, to share something powerful or a piece of advice or something you want to leave them with. What would that be?
Yeah, I think that we have the opportunity and we have the ability to dictate the outcomes of our future. And right now, there's a lot of doomer mindset. There's a lot of, the world is fucked. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to keep, drinking on the weekends and Netflixing and doing whatever. And a lot of people who go down the crypto, blockchain, Bitcoin, health rabbit holes, they actually come out with a more negative mindset than when they entered, because you learn about all these environmental toxins, you learn about how corrupt our monetary, our political systems are, and then you feel helpless, you feel like there's no bother. However, that couldn't be further from the truth. And we are a prime example of that. So many people who have taken control of their lives are an example of that we can build solutions, we can build alternative societies and systems that do improve the quality of our lives. Yes, we don't know what's going on in the global macro geopolitical world, but focus on what's in your sphere of influence, and you will be bewildered at how your mindset can actually dictate the outcome of your future. And really having a long-term vision, 5 to 10 years, for me has been the most helpful thing. What do you want your life to look like in 5 to 10 years? If you envision that and make most decisions working towards that long-term future that you want to build for yourselves, you will get there. You just have to believe that. And any hurdles, any obstacles can be overcome. There will always be setbacks. But from a company perspective, from an individual perspective, if there is something that we want to solve, we can go and solve it. We just need to be deliberate about that and just go and do it, because talk is cheap. Actions are underrated, and mindset is the most important thing in your life.
Do it. Just do
Nike.
it. Yeah, right. Love it. Thank you so much, Tristan. I really appreciate all your insight and this technology that you're a part of this team that's creating this new technology that's just bridging that path. So thank you from myself and from my audience, from everyone that is watching this. We really thank you for bridging that path. Thank you guys so much for joining us for this episode. And last but not least, always remember, gamify your abundance. Love you guys.
Thanks, Hannah.